So Stacy, we're here to talk about the contract in a couple of sections. Why don't you get us started with the buyer attachment? How do you present that, or how do you tell people to present the buyer attachment?
You know, I think when I present the buyer attachment, I think it's, for me, the start of setting expectations for your clients, which is one of the big things we all want to talk about. And that first page really gives you the opportunity to give them the highlights of what each section is going to cover. And I think one of the important ones for me is really going down and talking about the CC&Rs and the seller property disclosure statement.
Yeah,
what about you?
It's really a roadmap. I get it, you know.
Absolutely.
And as a broker, I want to make sure that that we have discussion early on about the buyer advisory. Holy smokes, the information that's contained in the buyer advisory is just so much information. You know, a real estate agent really doesn't know or can't know what's super important to the buyer. But boy, if it's not in the buyer advisory, I don't think it can't be
I've told
important.
clients for years that I think the buyer advisory is by far my favorite form that we have. It's something that I keep at my desk. It gives me the website references to go to. Keeps us out of too much trouble for recommending a specific website and having it might not be the most accurate.
Yeah. No, and so I guess in summary for the buyer attachment is it's important, review it, make sure the buyer understands it. It's a good question and answer opportunity. And don't forget the CC&Rs and don't forget the buyer advisory.
And I think the reason, because I'm sure you get a lot of questions, why isn't there an initial section on it?
And as we said, you know, it's the roadmap as to what to expect when you're...
Tell them what we're going to tell them.
Absolutely.
And then we'll tell them.
All right, so the contract is in 9 sections.
And
let's cover them one at a time.
Perfect.
Let's start off with section 1, the property section.
Perfect. So I think one of the first things I always want to point out is line 2. I think agents really are often unsure what to do in there.
Sure.
And one of the things that I do talk about with the agents a lot is that box, as identified in 9C, is a perfect box. It gives the opportunity for, occasionally, county might not always be accurate on who the seller is.
Sure, okay.
So it does give the opportunity to just go ahead and pop in that box, but make sure they put something in there.
Good. And yet, when it comes to 1B, you know, the premises, let's identify what we're intending to sell.
Yes.
And you can do it with any of the 3, all of the 3, 2 out of 3. But it's important that we kind of focus in on, you know, what's the address? You know, what's the assessor number?
Right.
You know, in some of the outline areas, you're going to get meets and bounds basically.
Absolutely.
Only, so.
And even by increasing that legal description section, when you are selling properties that have more than one parcel number, this gives us more space to try to identify that in a better fashion.
Sure.
Which I really do enjoy.
And then we get into the purchase price and the earnest money. You know, the earnest money is now set up so it's the buyer bringing the earnest money to the title company.
Wonderful.
But do they have it? Is it in their possession? Are they ready to make the deposit?
How often does the agent really have the earnest money in their possession? They don't.
And so when we're talking either on line 11 or on the earnest money in the form of, if the buyer needs 2 days or 3 days to get the earnest money, or to fly back to Chicago or wherever they're from in order to organize a wire transfer, let's describe it and let's give them the opportunity.
Let's do, because if they don't describe that it's going to take them 3 to 4 days to get there, it is a reasonable expectation that they're going to be cured by the listing agent.
Sure, because 18 says upon acceptance of the offer, the earnest money is going to be deposited.
Right.
And so if that's not the case, let's identify and let's tell the other side when it is going to be deposited.
So what is reasonable?
What is reasonable as far as the time?
Yeah, what is
Get her
reasonable?
done and get her done quickly. It's reasonable, according to the contract, next day.
Right.
If that's not the case, it's also reasonable to tell me when.
Absolutely. Have an expectation
Right.
for the other party,
Good.
and then if it's 2 or 3 days, let's cure.
Sure. And then obviously we describe the down payment, the loan, if there's going to be a loan, and the rest of it, which has been consistent for a while. Then we take a look at if it's an all-cash sale, lines 19 and 20. Hey,
Yes.
give me the source of funds. We want to know where the money's coming from and if there's any hidden thoughts or actions that need to take place.
Like a refinance of a previous home?
Sure. Or the closing of my house.
Absolutely. Anything along those
Or
lines.
by the way, it's a hard money lender.
Important stuff.
Sure.
Good stuff to know.
So now it's not an addition like before when it was
Right.
an additional clause addendum. Now it's part of the contract. If it's going to be cash, show me the money.
And I think that's a benefit to the agents. They're not out trying to get their parties to bring in the proof of funds. Now it's right here and there from the beginning. They need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're disclosing what's going on. So what we're doing is we're building the expectation that you have the money if you're going to write the contract and you're going to call it a cash sale. What a novel concept.
Seems logical.
You bet.
Close
Okay.
of escrow.
What's new in that section? We've talked about funds in U.S. currency. We look at 29 and 30, and we brought that forward from page 8 of the prior contract, and it's just talking about failure to have the money to close
Right.
isn't an unfulfilled loan contingency. If you say you've got the funds, you better have them.
How do you feel about what I feel like we see often, which is on or before?
Well, there's no, you're going to have to write that in because there's no
Correct.
prompt that says on or before.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, on or before is going to be bad in all instances in which there's an occupied property.
Yes.
If the property is vacant,
And both parties are willing to close early.
yeah, get her done.
Right.
And so even though you have a hard date and you plug in a hard date on line 24, if you want to do on or before, the best way to do it is do an addendum.
Which, in most cases with on or before, they end up doing an addendum anyway.
There you go.
So probably
All right.
could have just started with it.
Yep. So let's not talk about on or before anymore.
All right.
All right. Possession, the addenda. I guess the only thing else we have to talk about, well, no, we got a few things to talk about in section 1G, right?
Yeah, fixtures and personal can be a big argument.
No questions there, though.
None, and it's
I
none
think
at all.
I think it's important to understand and read and reread the feeder line, the 39 through 41. For the purposes of the contract, fixtures shall mean properties attached, affixed to the premises. Seller agrees that all existing. Existing should probably be in bold and flashing lights,
Yes,
right?
because how many keys is that?
How many?
How many keys to the house? How many garage
Yeah,
door openers?
Exactly. Are they
However
there?
many they had in the beginning.
Existing.
Existing.
Yeah. And so it modifies the balance of that string on line 40. The fixtures, the personal property, and means to operate fixtures and personal property such as remote controls.
And utilizing those spaces for the description of the refrigerator, the
Sure.
washer, the dryer.
Yep.
I think that's an important one in there.
Yeah, especially the refrigerator. I mean, if you want the nice fancy one in the kitchen, not the one in the garage.
You don't want my beer fridge in the garage? Dang it.
I did, but no, I didn't think that's what I
Yeah.
was talking about. So yeah, a little bit, 55 through 62 got expanded for some additional information. And then when it comes to line 65 to 67, the leased items, here we are with, tell me what is leased, and give me a lot more information about the solar panels that are up on the roof.
Oh, please give a lot of information about the solar panels.
Right. So expect to see a solar addendum, coming up in the not
Right.
too distant future.
Because right now it's written that they are not included in the sale unless we're going to bring them in
Correct. And so we're going to give notice. I'm going to give notice.
on seller property disclosure statement.
SPDS,
Correct.
at least within 3 days from contract acceptance, and we want to know, what does it take to
Absolutely.
assume
it.
the lease, and what else is included.
And did I make the sale contingent on the buyer being able to get the lease?
Sure.
If that's a question for financing.
Exactly.
I think one big thing I did want to make sure we talked about was that if this is an all-cash sale, we need to go to Section 3, which means those extra appraisal contingencies and that aren't built in if you're a cash sale. And I think that does get misunderstood often.
Sure. So let me see how we got this cash sales now. So you want to see the money,
Yep,
and you want to know during the inspection period whether we're set to go or not.
correct.
Because you don't have, so it's really not financing. So if it's a cash deal, it's really not financing.
It's really not financing.
That makes sense to me.
Seems logical. Seems
All right,
logical.
well, how'd we do on section 1?
I think we did really well. How about you?
Well, there you have it. Those are our best, our things to talk about concerning
section
the
one.
attachment in section 1.